1960, the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Sammy Davis Jr. walked up to the front desk to check into his room, the same hotel where he was headlining that night. The desk clerk looked at him with undisguised disgust and said loudly, so everyone in the lobby could hear, "We don't have any rooms for you. Try the West Side." The West Side was the segregated black neighborhood across the railroad tracks. The message was clear. Even though Sammy was the star attraction, even though his name was on the marquee, even though he was bringing in thousands of dollars for the hotel, he wasn't welcome to sleep there because of the color of his skin. Sammy stood there, humiliated in front of a lobby full of white guests who stared and whispered. Some looked uncomfortable. Most just watched. No one said anything. Then Dean Martin appeared from seemingly nowhere and did something so quietly powerful that most people in that lobby never even knew it happened, but it would change everything. What Dean did in the next 5 minutes wasn't caught by cameras or reported in newspapers, but the few people who witnessed it never forgot. This is the story of how Dean Martin fought racism, not with grand gestures or public speeches, but with quiet acts of defiance that carried more weight than any words ever could. Before we uncover this hidden story of courage and friendship, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This isn't just about two entertainers. It's about how real change happens through quiet courage when nobody's watching. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and let's begin. Las Vegas in 1960, a segregated paradise. Las Vegas in 1960 was a city of brutal contradictions. It was America's entertainment capital, where the biggest stars in the world performed to integrated audiences. Black and white patrons sat side by side in showrooms, laughing at the same jokes, applauding the same performances. But the moment those shows ended, segregation snapped back into place like an iron door slamming shut. Black entertainers, even stars like Sammy Davis Jr., Nat King Cole, and Lena Horne, could perform on stage but couldn't sleep in the hotels, eat in the restaurants, swim in the pools, or gamble in the casinos, where they'd just entertained thousands of white customers. After their shows, black performers had to leave through back exits and return to the West Side, a segregated neighborhood with substandard hotels where black people were allowed to stay. It was humiliating, exhausting, and a constant reminder that no amount of talent or fame could overcome the color of their skin. The Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop represented something revolutionary, an integrated group of friends performing together at a time when that was radical. But even within this supposedly progressive group, Sammy faced discrimination that his white friends didn't fully understand or couldn't fully protect him from. Sammy's daily humiliations. Every day brought fresh indignities for Sammy Davis Jr. He'd arrive at a hotel where he was the headline act and be told he couldn't use the front entrance. He'd finish his show to thunderous applause, then be told he couldn't eat in the hotel restaurant. He'd see white performers, often less famous and talented than him, treated like royalty while he was treated like hired help. The psychological toll was enormous. Sammy would smile through it all on stage, entertaining audiences who'd never know the pain he carried. He'd joke about it sometimes, deflecting with humor because anger was dangerous for a black man in 1960s America. But his friends in the Rat Pack saw the toll it took. They watched Sammy's forced smile after being denied service. They heard the edge in his voice when he made jokes about knowing his place. They felt his hurt, even when he tried to hide it. Frank Sinatra tried to help by demanding that hotels treat Sammy better. Frank would negotiate exceptions. Sammy could stay in the hotel, but had to use a service elevator. Sammy could eat in the restaurant, but only at certain times. These partial victories were something, but they also highlighted the fundamental injustice. Sammy's acceptance was conditional, based on his connection to powerful white friends rather than his inherent human dignity. Dean Martin's quiet observation. Dean Martin, characteristically, said less than Frank but observed more. He watched Sammy navigate this maze of discrimination with grace and humor. He saw the forced smiles, the careful navigation of unwritten rules, the constant calculation of which battles were worth fighting. Dean also saw something else, the subtle ways that even well-meaning white people, including some of their friends, treated Sammy differently. The jokes that went just a little too far. The assumptions about how Sammy should act or what he should tolerate. The expectation that Sammy should be grateful for the exceptions that white performers never had to negotiate for. Unlike Frank, who often addressed these issues loudly and publicly, Dean's approach was different. He believed in action over words, in quiet interventions rather than grand gestures. He'd learned growing up as the son of Italian immigrants that sometimes the most effective way to fight injustice was through small, consistent acts that changed the culture one interaction at a time. The incident at the front desk. On this particular day in 1960, Sammy had flown in for a week of performances at the Sands Hotel. He was exhausted from travel and just wanted to check into his room before the evening show. He approached the front desk with his luggage, his name clearly visible on the marquee outside. Sammy Davis Jr. Live tonight. The desk clerk was new, or at least, Sammy hadn't seen him before. The young man looked at Sammy with poorly concealed contempt and said loudly, "Can I help you?" "Yes, I'm checking in." Sammy Davis Jr. The clerk barely glanced at the reservation book. "We don't have any rooms available for you. Try the west side." Sammy felt the familiar wave of humiliation wash over him. He'd been through this before, but it never got easier. "I'm performing here tonight. I'm the headline act. There should be a room reserved." "I said we don't have any rooms." The clerk's voice got louder, drawing attention. Several white guests in the lobby stopped what they were doing to watch. "If you don't leave, I'll call security." This was the calculation Sammy had to make constantly. Push back and risk being labeled difficult, or angry, or accept the humiliation and preserve his ability to work. He was about to turn and leave. It wasn't worth the fight when Dean Martin appeared. Dean's entrance. Dean had been having a drink in the hotel bar when he happened to glance toward the front desk and saw Sammy standing there, shoulders slumped in that particular way that Dean had learned to recognize. It meant Sammy was being discriminated against again. Then Dean said something that would become legendary among the people who were there, though it never made it into the newspapers. "Here's your choice. Either Sammy gets a room, a real room, with no conditions, no special elevators, no segregated anything, or I don't perform tonight. And if I don't perform, Frank doesn't perform. And if Frank doesn't perform, good luck explaining to your casino owner why the Rat Pack walked out and took their crowds with them." It was a nuclear option. The Rat Pack was bringing in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. Their shows were sold out for the entire week. The casino was making a fortune from the high rollers who came to see them perform. Losing that over a hotel room would be catastrophic for the Sands. But more than the financial threat, there was something in Dean's tone that made it clear. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't posturing. Dean Martin was drawing a line, and he wasn't going to budge. The manager's face went through several shades of red. He glanced at Sammy, then back at Dean, then at the gathered crowd pretending not to watch. "Mr. Martin, can we discuss this privately?" "No. Whatever you have to say, you can say right here. Either Sammy gets a room or we all leave." "What's it going to be?" "The victory." The manager, faced with losing the Rat Pack or breaking the hotel's unwritten racial policies, made the only choice that made financial sense. "Mr. Davis, of course you're welcome here. There seems to have been a misunderstanding with our new clerk. Let me personally handle your check-in." 5 minutes later, Sammy had a room key to a suite on the same floor as Dean's. It wasn't a basement. It wasn't accessed through a service elevator. It was a regular guest room, the kind Sammy should have been given from the start. But Dean wasn't done. "And just to be clear," he said to the manager, "this isn't a one-time exception. Sammy is a guest here, just like anyone else. That means he uses the front door, eats in any restaurant he chooses, swims in the pool if he wants, and is treated with the same respect you'd give any other performer. Are we clear?" The manager nodded, clearly unhappy but trapped by Dean's ultimatum. Why this stayed hidden? What's remarkable is that this incident didn't make the newspapers. Nobody made a press release. There were no photos of Dean's stand. The story didn't become part of the official Rat Pack mythology. Why? Because Dean didn't want publicity. When reporters heard rumors about an incident at the Sands, Dean refused to comment. "It's not news," he said. "A man checked into a hotel room. That's it." Sammy, respecting Dean's wishes and also understanding that publicizing these incidents could make them both targets, also kept quiet about the specifics. The only reason we know the story is because some of the witnesses, other guests, hotel staff, fellow performers, told it years later. But by then, Dean had passed away, and the story became part of the hidden history of the civil rights movement. Countless small battles fought by individuals who used whatever power they had to push back against injustice. The ripple effect. After Dean's confrontation, something shifted at the Sands Hotel. Word spread through the staff. Dean Martin had threatened to walk over how they treated Sammy Davis Jr. management, terrified of losing their biggest draw, sent around a memo to all staff that performers were to be treated equally regardless of race. It wasn't a moral awakening. It was pure economics. But the result was the same. Sammy and other black performers started getting better treatment at the Sands. Other hotels in Vegas noticed. If the Sands was integrating to keep the Rat Pack happy, maybe they should consider similar policies. The dominoes started falling, slowly, imperfectly, but falling nonetheless. By 1961, several major Vegas hotels had begun relaxing their segregation policies, at least for prominent black performers. It wasn't full integration. Black guests who weren't entertainers still faced discrimination, but it was progress. And much of that progress could be traced back to Dean Martin sitting in a lobby and saying, "Fix this or we leave." Sammy's private gratitude. Years later, in his autobiography, Sammy Davis Jr. wrote about Dean Martin's quiet support during the civil rights struggle. While the book mentioned several incidents where Frank Sinatra had publicly fought for integration, there was a passage about Dean that was more subtle but perhaps more profound. Dean never made speeches about civil rights. He didn't march or protest or make public statements. But when it mattered, when I was alone and facing discrimination, Dean was there, not to make a scene or get credit, but just to stand beside me and refuse to accept that I should be treated as less than human. That quiet strength meant more to me than any public gesture ever could. Sammy understood something that many people missed about Dean. His refusal to publicize his stands wasn't about modesty. It was about effectiveness. Public confrontations often created backlash and entrenched positions. Dean's quiet, firm insistence on doing the right thing, backed by real consequences, actually changed behavior. What Dean never said. Dean Martin never talked about these incidents publicly. When reporters asked him about civil rights or integration in Vegas, his responses were characteristically brief. "Everyone deserves to be treated with respect. That's not political. That's just decent." When asked specifically about defending Sammy, Dean would deflect. "Sammy's my friend. You stand up for your friends. That's not heroic. That's just what you do." This modesty frustrated some civil rights activists who wanted white allies to be more vocal. But others understood that Dean's quiet actions, his consistent refusal to accept discrimination, his use of economic leverage, his willingness to put his career on the line, were actually quite radical for a white entertainer in 1960. The other incidents. The front desk confrontation wasn't the only time Dean quietly intervened on Sammy's behalf. Multiple witnesses reported other incidents. Dean refusing to perform at a venue that wouldn't let Sammy eat in the restaurant, even though it meant forfeiting a substantial payment. Dean quietly paying for renovations to Sammy's dressing room after seeing that it was far inferior to the white performers' rooms. Dean walking out of a party when the host asked Sammy to leave. Dean insisting that Sammy be included in all promotional materials, photos, and advertisements equally with the White Rat Pack members. None of these incidents were publicized. Most weren't even widely known until years later. Dean did them simply because he believed they were right, not because he wanted credit. The power of quiet courage. Dean Martin's hidden support of Sammy Davis Jr. teaches us profound lessons about allyship, courage, and creating real change. 1. Real allyship happens when nobody's watching. Dean didn't make grand public gestures because he wanted to be seen as a civil rights hero. He intervened in moments of discrimination because it was the right thing to do, regardless of who was watching. That's real allyship, action motivated by justice, not recognition. 2. Economic power can be a tool for justice. Dean understood that his value to the casino gave him leverage. He used that leverage explicitly. Treat Sammy with dignity or lose the economic benefit of our performances. This pragmatic use of economic power was often more effective than moral appeals. 3. Consistency matters more than grand gestures. One public protest gets attention. Consistently standing up for what's right in every small situation actually changes culture. Dean's repeated, quiet interventions created more lasting change than any single dramatic confrontation could have. 4. True humility means doing good without seeking credit. Dean's refusal to publicize his stands wasn't false modesty. It was genuine humility. He understood that making himself the hero of the story would distract from the real issue, Sammy's right to be treated with dignity. 5. Small acts of courage compound over time. Dean's willingness to sit in that lobby and refuse to move seemed like a small thing, but it changed policy at the Sands. That policy change influenced other hotels. Those changes contributed to broader integration in Vegas. One person's quiet stand rippled outward in ways that were never fully measurable, but were undeniably real. What history missed? History tends to remember the loud voices of change. The protesters, the speechmakers, the martyrs. These voices are essential and deserve remembrance. But history often forgets the quiet supporters. People like Dean Martin who used their privilege and power to create change in ways that didn't make headlines. How many other stories like Dean's have been lost to history? How many quiet acts of courage, small stands against injustice, consistent refusals to accept discrimination have faded from memory simply because nobody wrote them down? The modern application. Dean Martin's example is especially relevant today. We live in an era of performative allyship, where people post about social justice on social media, but don't take action in their real lives. Dean did the opposite. He took real action without seeking social credit. True allyship looks like using your privilege to open doors for others, standing up in moments when no one else will, making personal sacrifices without seeking recognition, consistently choosing justice over comfort, letting the people you're supporting be the heroes of their own stories. Your turn. If this story changed how you think about allyship and creating real change, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear that real courage often happens in quiet moments when nobody's watching. Drop a comment. Have you ever witnessed someone quietly standing up for what's right without seeking credit? What did you learn from them? Remember, Sammy Davis Jr. was publicly humiliated at a hotel where he was the star attraction. Dean Martin's response wasn't caught on camera or reported in newspapers, but it changed policies, influenced an industry, and showed that sometimes the most powerful stands are the ones nobody sees. Be like Dean. Do what's right because it's right, not because anyone's watching. See you in the next video, where we'll continue uncovering the hidden stories that remind us that real heroes often work in silence, that real change happens in small moments, and that true courage doesn't need applause.